So you want to go to Bible college. Today, we ask the question, how will others view my education? And can you live with that? On this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. Today's video is primarily directed towards those who want to become a pastor or a theological researcher. Everyone thinks if they go and get themselves a theological education, that they will return and become a respected Christian teacher. And it is true that a few will become respected teachers working at Bible colleges. But other things can happen also. The so-called unintended consequences. Denominational structures, and yes, independent churches can have them too, can be really funny when it comes to how they look at higher education. Some of these denominations have their own pet seminaries that they only select pastoral candidates from. Some denominations prefer pastors with no education at all. Some churches recruit primarily from the music team. So a broad education doesn't always work in your favor. By the way, learn to play the guitar early and learn to strum a few religious choruses. It's more than a fun hobby. It's a pastoral life skill. Boy, I wish I'd learned that earlier in life. Okay. The point is that if you go into ministry, become familiar with your church's credentialing process. And just because you get your pastoral credential from the recommended school, just be prepared for some unpleasant surprises. You might earn a credential in an official denominational seminary, move to another part of the country, and discover that the local churches only hire ex-used car salesmen as pastors. Not that I've ever encountered that before. Ugh. The other factor to consider is if you have to relocate frequently and have to live in an area where your favorite denomination has no presence. And yes, this can happen with even the largest denominations. You can find the process of church membership becomes sticky and awkward because of your education. I have found that you get a lot of extra scrutiny during the membership process and even have your membership application outright rejected because of your education. And this has happened to me on more than one occasion. Okay, so this is something here I'm really speaking out of experience. I had once applied for membership to a relatively independent Bible church. And the normal process was supposed to take 4 weeks. In fact, it pretty much was smooth sailing for practically everybody that had applied. But in my particular case, they decided to give me a little bit of extra oversight. And the process took 8 weeks. And frankly, they were finding any excuse they could to deny membership. Because, frankly, they were concerned that my education could become a disruptive influence in the congregation should I be given membership. I had another membership application at a completely different church that had been denied outright because, again, they were concerned, without saying it, that my education was an issue for the congregation. So the fact is that people are going to start behaving differently around you after you become biblically educated. The fact is, once you have that educational credential from, let's say, at least say the pastoral level or above, You'll find that some people who used to, congregate around will avoid you. Some will ask you probing questions. Some will scorn you. You may be even excommunicated and asked to leave.
That's Latin, darling. Evidently, Mr. Ringo's an educated man. Now I really hate him.
All of these are, say, possibilities that can happen to you once you get a theological education. And, a lot of people go into theological education considering a lot of options. Okay. I mean, everyone considers, okay, what's the debt load I'm going to take on? What's my student debt load? People consider, okay, what am I going to have to do to get the degree done? Very few people consider what's going to happen after the degree. How is this going to change your life? Now, I think that a theological degree should change your life. Spiritual formation should be a part of the educational process. If you go to a theological college, a Bible college, and you come out the exact same as you entered, something failed. Something went wrong. Something went off the rails. Because, you go to a Bible college not just to get head knowledge, but to also to be developed spiritually, to be guided, to be molded, to become an effective laborer for Christ. So you are going to be different coming out, and people are going to see that. They can't help but see that. Your coworkers are going to see that. I mean, if you work at a secular job, people are going to see you're different. They might not know how you're different, but they're going to notice you're different. Because you cannot ever act the same again. Your coworkers might have some problems, and you may offer them some free advice, some free counseling. Well, they're going to ask, where did that come from? How do you know so much? So it's going to raise questions. You're going to go to a church and somebody's going to say something wacky, and you go, well, that's not theologically correct, and here's the verse that says why. So people are going to react to the changes that happen inside of you through a proper theological education. Now, again, if you come out the same as you went in, then I kind of doubt that you would have learned anything at all. Because even if it was just, say, head knowledge, the head knowledge of studying the scriptures is going to transform you. It can't but, because the Word of God is living and active. So I really, really think that we need to have, they have something in the finance industry. You go to the bank, you take out a loan, and you're often given a truth in lending document. And that basically spells out what you are agreeing to when you take out a bank loan. Well, we should sort of have a truth in Bible college statement. One that tells you what's going to happen once you leave Bible college. Yeah, sure, you're going to be saddled with lots of debt. But it's going to have other impacts too. People are going to find out about your college education. One of the things about education is it is one of the most easiest to research credentials. Your employers can look at your past and they can say, okay, maybe he worked at this job, maybe he didn't. It's hard to tell. Your work history is more hidden than your education. Your education is probably the easiest credential to look up on a person. So people are going to find out where you went to study, where you got your degrees, etc. And that can have negative consequences, especially if you are working at a company where it's, say, more woke. A woke employer may not want somebody with a theological college education working on staff, and you might end up being terminated because of that. So you do really need to consider that this is a life-changing event. This is something that's going to radically change your future. Now, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from pursuing a theological education, a higher one, at the, say, the master's level, the pastoral level, or say doctoral level. But I think there's also benefit in spelling out too, say, the more negative effects that can happen as well. So I think this is one of those things that, and frankly, I'll be very honest here. Pursuing a theological education has been one of the best life experiences I've ever had. I learned so much pursuing a theological education. It isn't even funny. I mean, I am just reaping the rewards of that over and over and over and over again. But there's also been some negatives too. And that's what I want to sort of spell out here, is the negatives. So that, yes, it is absolutely worth doing. I benefited from it greatly. I recommend it even to others. Even though I tongue-in-cheek say, hey, consider alternate careers as well. But there are some significant negatives. And as long as you are aware of that going into it, you can also prepare for it as well and expect it. And if you expect it, it's not quite so bad once you encounter it. So anyway, I hope you learned something from this. I want to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.